Hi, Kelsey.
Perfect. So we might as well get started here. For anyone who doesn't see the beginning of this, there's going to be a recorded version that we'll be posting to the group shortly after. So let's just dive in for the time being. So my name is Chase Berkey. I'm the CFO of Look Style Society. And for those of you who don't know, we are a high-end salon in Las Vegas with locations in Town Square and Tivoli Village over in Summerlin. And one of the things that we're very big on is continual growth and development, as well as support. And kind of on that theme, we felt like everyone, could really use some support. There's a lot of misinformation out there, incomplete information, just a lot of pieces of information that everyone's trying to pull together, whether it involves unemployment, which is currently a mess, as I'm sure everyone is very well aware of right now. And then there's other things that people have heard under the CARES Act, the Paycheck Protection Program, as well as the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. So there's a lot of things that are going on there. There's also some tax credits. So we kind of wanted to just, cut through some of the noise there so that we can deliver what's specifically relevant to our beauty professionals in Las Vegas, the vast majority of whom are self-employed. And self-employed individuals have kind of gotten, at least up to this point, a little bit of the short end of the stick in terms of guidance because there's certain assistance that you haven't been able to apply for until very recently, unemployment insurance being one of those. And Nevada is currently undergoing systems implementations, which is taking far longer than anyone would care for, but it is in the works. So you will eventually be eligible for that. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But I did want to start off with some things that you might be aware of or you might have heard tangentially here and there. But one of the first things that's out there is, and you may or may not have heard of this, under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, there is actually tax credits that are available for self-employed individuals. Sorry, I've got a fly flying around here. Of course, that's what happens when you go live, by the way. So you're actually able to get an income tax credit for this whole situation because all of our beauty professionals in Las Vegas have been under quarantine, and so they have not been able to work. And so what this tax credit allows you to do is to take up to $511 per day for up to 10 business days. And you'll get a tax credit for that. And it's up to $511 because it depends on how much money you earned in 2019 in terms of what you would be eligible for. So, so long as you earn in 2020 roughly what you did in 2019, and that's somewhere, up to $511, you're actually going to be able to get an income tax credit, which is going to be roughly $5,000. That's good against your income tax as well as your self-employment tax. That's going to essentially be for not having the ability to work during this time. So that starts April 1st. You're not going to be able to fully get this tax credit until you file next year. However, with the anticipation of having this tax credit, you can actually reduce the amount that you're paying in for any estimated income tax payments, which one of the other changes that's happened with this whole thing is that Q1 and Q2, so quarter one and quarter two estimated tax payments are now not due until July 15th. Whereas they used to be due on April 15th and June 15th. So that payment date got delayed. And because of tax credits like this, you may not even have an estimated tax payment that you need to do on July 15th for tax year 2020. So this credit can be worth up to about $5,000. And really, there's nothing you need to do to qualify for it. It's just a matter of how much you're going to get under that. And it's going to be essentially a proration of how much you earned during the year down to a daily basis to determine how much of that credit you're going to get. And it's going to cap out, once again, at $511 per day. There's also another credit that you can take on top of that for those of you who are parents. and who have kids that have school closures and or daycare closures due to COVID-19. So that credit is up to $200 a day for up to 50 business days. So that can be up to $10,000 on top of the $5,000 that you'd be eligible for just by not being able to work. And so this is, the very valuable, addition to that tax credit. So if you were able to qualify for both of these, the first one you definitely will be. The second one, you've got to have, kids that are not able to be at school or their daycare because of the pandemic. But assuming you had both those situations, you could get a tax credit of $15,000, which could very easily mean that you don't pay anything in tax for the year of 2020, depending on your situation. So that's huge, and something that is kind of getting missed in all of these other more immediate assistance programs, because you don't get this as money in your bank account per se. It's more just money you don't have to pay out, as well as money you could potentially get when you file your 2020 returns in spring of next year. So that's really something to be dialed in on, and something you're going to want to ask your tax professional about to make sure that you get all the facts and you understand exactly what to expect in your situation. So then the other thing that's on a lot of people's minds right now is what's called the Triple P, which is an acronym for Paycheck Protection Program, as well as the EIDL, which is an acronym for Economic Injury Disaster Loans. And so they're two separate programs, but they kind of work together in a unique way. So the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, that is going to be a loan that's payable over 30 years at an interest rate of 3.75%. And there's no prepayment penalties, there's no fees, there's none of that. So, you can pay it off as soon or as slowly as you would want to. And if you apply for that EIDL loan, you're also able to apply for the emergency EIDL grant, which you may have heard of is the amount that's up to $10,000 that you are supposed to get advanced relatively quickly. We've learned that it was not as quick as originally promised, but that's up to $10,000. But what has come out recently is that's only going to be $1,000 per employee, up to $10,000. So being self-employed, like most of you are, you're going to be looking at $1,000 that you're getting from that part of the program. And we've seen a number of businesses actually just today that have received that money. So that money is definitely being distributed. So if you haven't applied for your EIDL loan, that's something to very strongly consider so that you can get at least that emergency grant of $1,000. It's going to be separate from the actual loan itself. That's going to be payable and same sort of thing over 30 years. But this emergency grant is actually not repayable. It's a grant. It's not a loan. But it does have some interplay with the Paycheck Protection Program. And jumping into what exactly that is, basically, when it comes to self-employed individuals like yourselves, what you're looking at is if you filed a 2019 tax return, you're going to want to look at your Schedule C. And on there is going to be a net taxable income amount that's towards the bottom of the page. Whatever that amount is, you're going to divide that by 12 to get the average per month. Then you multiply that average times 2.5, which essentially represents 2.5 months. And that's going to represent the amount of the loan that you're eligible for. And so the beauty of this Triple P loan is that the majority of it is going to be forgiven because there's provisions in that loan that say whatever you spend on payroll, which is kind of a loosely defined term for self-employed individuals, over the 8 weeks after you get the loan is going to be forgiven, as well as any rent or utility payments. So it's very plausible that you could have the entire loan forgiven if you do have rent payments and you do have utility payments specifically for your chair rental, or if you're working from home, whatever is relegated to your home office. But there's a really real chance that you're going to get forgiveness for the vast majority, if not the whole amount of this loan. And the forgiveness on that loan is going to be entirely tax-free. So it's going to be, income without the tax on it, which is pretty awesome, to be honest. But where it interplays with that emergency EIDL grant is that if you got your $1,000, from that grant, you're going to have to reduce the amount of loan forgiveness that you're getting under the Triple P program by that $1,000. So if you got a loan for, let's say, $15,000, and your calculation for loan forgiveness, say it was $13,000 after what you earned, which is deemed your payroll, as well as your rent and utilities. Let's say you got $13,000 of forgiveness. You're actually only going to get 12 there because you already received 1,000 via the emergency EIDL grant. So they work together, but really the takeaway here is that the EIDL emergency grant is going to be the fastest money that you're going to get. The Triple P is probably going to take you a little bit longer, and it's just going to kind of depend on your bank. And there's also, you may have heard concerns about the funds running out, which it will. However, the question is, how quickly will Congress approve additional appropriations? And that remains yet to be seen, but there's widespread agreement on something in the neighborhood of $250 billion. It's just a matter of making sure that Congress can agree on the totality of whatever this new bill is, because there's other things being introduced into it that have less consent on them. So that's kind of a somewhat of a broad overview of kind of how these programs work, and really how it applies to you guys as self-employed individuals. Once again, is whenever you hear payroll, you guys obviously don't run a payroll, right? And it doesn't matter what you take out of a business account or whatever. For the vast majority of you guys are sole proprietors who report on a Schedule C. So payroll for you is going to be your net income on your Schedule C. If you have a structure where you have an S corp and you pay yourself a wage, you're in a different boat. But I would imagine the vast majority here are sole proprietors and or LLCs where they're the only member, which that all functions the same. So when you hear payroll, think your net taxable income on your Schedule C, and that's what's going to be the payroll that they look at when they divide it by 12 and multiply it by 2.5 to determine your loan amount, as well as determining how much of the loan they're going to forgive. So it's going to behoove you, once the restrictions lift, to earn as much money as you possibly can for a couple of reasons. One, so that you can get the maximum loan forgiveness under the Triple P program. And number two, so that if you're taking advantage of those tax credits for sick leave and even emergency family sick leave, that you'll have the most income to be able to use for those purposes. So it's important, as soon as we can get back to work, because that's how you're really going to benefit the most from all of these programs. So with that, I'm going to flip it over to Dave Dyer, who directs all of our marketing initiatives at Look Style Society, to give you a little bit of information in terms of logistics on how to make sure you're submitting any questions that you have, as well as how we're going to go about addressing those.
Yep. Hey guys. So yeah, if you could just use the comments section, we're going to see those questions come in as you ask them. We have a few that are kind of piled up. So what I'll do is I'll display them on the stream, and then I'll either address it to Paula or Chase, and then we can kind of go from there. It seems like before we switch over to like unemployment, Chase, where do they apply for EIDL?
The EIDL is done directly through the SBA. So we can follow up in the Facebook group with that exact link. So EIDL is going to be directly through the SBA, and then any Triple P loans are going to be done through your bank. So hopefully you're with a bank that's participating and that will accept your application. If you're not, then we also have some additional resources in terms of lenders that are dealing with non-current customers to be able to apply for that. Because the big thing that people are worried about right now is not being able to apply because either their bank is not accepting it, or their loan amount's not high enough for the bank to care. So we'll definitely be providing that resource. And as soon as we hear of more lenders that are coming on that will take non-current customers, we'll be putting that information out there as well.
Sounds good. Okay, we'll switch it over to Paula. Paula, before I get into these unemployment questions, can you kind of just give a general overview of where we're at with DETR and unemployment?
Yes.
And
So
maybe introduce yourself too.
what's that?
And maybe introduce yourself too while you're at it.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I'm Paula Lean, and I'm the area manager for Look Style Society. My direct source for information regarding unemployment benefits is actually Tara Hagan. She is the Chief Deputy Treasurer for Nevada, and she meets with the Department of Unemployment on a weekly basis. And from there, she is providing me information, which we are posting in our Facebook group. So she did write a statement that she wanted me to read today to everybody. And it says that the Department of Unemployment is working on implementing the system for self-employed workers to receive benefits as directed under the CARES Act. The system is not yet running, but DTR is working round the clock to get it up. They have identified a vendor and a call center. But in the meantime, they are asking that you do not apply for unemployment if you are an independent contractor. When you do apply, what that does is essentially it is going to delay your processing time for getting your unemployment benefits. So as frustrating as that probably sounds, that is, the most recent information and guidelines regarding applying as an independent contractor. She will continue to provide updates as she gets them, and we will continue to post them in the group.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting that even though they haven't been eligible yet, that it will be backdated, correct? Where they can go back to the mandated closure?
Yes, it will be retroactive, and as well as the additional 600 that's covered under the CARES Act. That will also be retroactive. But again, the main thing is just to wait until that website is up and running in a way that allows independent contractors to apply.
Okay, sounds good. First question is, I got my card, but nothing still show pending approval. Do we need to refile?
Yes, you're going to have to refile once the website is up and running. That is my understanding at this point.
Okay. How do we apply for unemployment?
Once the website is up, there will be a special section that is for independent contractors, gig workers, and all the other 1099 employees.
What is that? Let me look up. What's the actual website?
It's just the DETR website.
Yeah. The easiest way probably is just if you type in unemployment Nevada in Google.
And we'll post that link
Yeah.
into the Facebook group just so everyone has it readily clickable.
Okay. Next question is apply by calling your business banker. Chase, which one would you call your business banker for?
So you would need to apply with your bank that you currently are at for purposes of the PPP loan. Once you get the Paycheck Protection Program, that's going to be applied through your bank. However, if you're talking about the Economic Injury Disaster Loan or the Emergency EIDL grant, those will both go through the SBA. So PPP through your bank, EIDL through the SBA.
Okay. And then if I've applied on SBA already, what would have to be next?
So there's a little bit of a nuance to that question. So if you applied under the old rules, before they got this system online and allowed for, essentially checking the box in the emergency EIDL grant, you're probably going to want to go back and do that again because that's how you're going to be eligible for the emergency EIDL grant. But assuming you followed it under, the new system, which I think has been live for about 2.5 weeks at this point. So as long as you applied after that, it's a little bit of a waiting game. You should be getting your EIDL emergency grant here shortly. because like I said, businesses are now, especially starting today, are really receiving those in mass. So if you haven't gotten yours yet, and you did it through their updated process within the last 2.5 weeks, then you should be seeing that money soon. The other thing to do after you've done your EIDL loan application is to start on your triple P application, because that's probably the next most important thing to get submitted. So you can get, and we'll link this on the Facebook group as well, but there's an application that the SBA has that any bank is going to ask for because it's part of their underwriting file. But you can start preparing that, get your documents together. They're going to ask for any 1099s you got, your tax return, or at least your Schedule C for your tax return for 2019. So if you can start compiling those documents together, that's going to help you out. So when you can submit that to your bank, that you have it all ready to go. Maybe the only other thing that's higher priority is just selecting a bank and figuring out which bank will take your application, because that's kind of the name of the game right now. A lot of banks are trying to limit how many applications they take. A lot of banks are trying to say, well, we're only going to take applications from our current customers. And of those, we're only going to look at the people who have, checking accounts as well as credit products with us. So there's a lot of banks that are really trying to not participate in the way that I think the SBA and Congress intended them to. But that's a larger issue of the risk that they're taking on for relatively low revenue commissions. So it's a little bit of a money game for them. So once again, what's highest priority is going to be securing the lender that will take your application. And then once you have that application or that bank ready to go, then also be compiling all of that information they're going to ask for, which once again is going to be your tax return from 2019 and the SBA application itself, which is only 2 pages. It's pretty easy to fill out. The only thing that's going to be a little bit of a question mark for most people is that payroll figure, because they ask for your average payroll. They're going to ask for both your total payroll for 2019 and your average. The average is being divided by 12, obviously, but the total payroll that they're looking for, once again, is going to be the amount on your Schedule C, your net income that's at the bottom of your Schedule C.
And Chase, can you clarify? So let's say I apply for the Paycheck Protection Program and I'm on unemployment and I got approved for the PPP. How does that work together? Do I need to stop doing unemployment once that goes through?
Yeah, so there's no real clear guidance on this out there. However, it's my opinion that if you're collecting both unemployment as well as the triple P, you're probably going to face some repercussion from doing so, because you're essentially double dipping. Because the purpose of the triple P program is to keep people employed. And when it comes to self-employed folks, it's to keep them, having some sort of money. But if they're also getting unemployment, it's kind of either or. They wanted people, that have jobs to keep jobs, so that they didn't have to go and dip into the unemployment system. So if you're double dipping from that, there's a good chance you could face some repercussions from that. So a best practice would be, apply for unemployment insurance when you can. But then as soon as you get your loan for triple P, you should end that unemployment insurance as soon as you can. And then after the 8-week period, from the loan origination date to the end of the 8 weeks, once you get past that point, if we're still not opened up at that point in Nevada, then you're really going to want to reapply for those unemployment insurance benefits. But you just don't want to have both of them going during that 8-week period, because that's probably where you're going to get dinged.
Okay. Sorry, I'm a little behind on questions, so I'll start getting through these. I've applied for everything: unemployment, PPP, SBA loan. Haven't heard anything back. Getting zero assistance at this time. A friend of mine who owns a restaurant received his loan funds within a week. Why are we having to wait so long for any response?
The SBA is totally overwhelmed right now. Within, I think, the first 4 days of the program being open for applications, they had 500,000 applications. And, that's obviously skyrocketed since. There's 33 million small businesses that are technically eligible for the program. So it's really a matter of, and it's not just the SBA, it's unemployment insurance. It's really anyone who's involved in this whole thing. There's so much volume that's being dumped on these government institutions that are not used to handling this volume, on top of guidance that has really been piecemeal at best, that everyone's trying to grapple, to, A, get on top of what the guidance is, and B, start processing loans. So when it comes to EIDL, it's a huge backlog. They're working through it as fast as they can, but when you have millions of applications to process and only thousands of employees, unfortunately, it just takes time. So I wish there was a better answer than that. I mean, when it comes to data on the unemployment insurance side of things, there's never been the ability for self-employed people to claim unemployment, so they're having to totally redesign their systems, in a way that they weren't ready for. Also during a shutdown, which they may not be well set up, to work remotely as it is. So there's a lot of headwinds that governmental institutions are facing trying to implement this.
Okay. I applied for the EIDL and got an update email, but it doesn't give me any information on what to do.
Yeah, so that update email is probably just saying that it's in review, and there's nothing really you can do at this point. You just have to wait because they're not going to field your call and expedite your application. So as long as you got that confirmation, you at least know you're in the queue. And unfortunately, the only answer here is that you're just going to have to wait, to hear more.
Okay. What if you've already applied for unemployment? I was directed to apply by my CPA. That's probably like from a few minutes ago. So maybe asking, kind of answering the question of which program do you go with?
So yeah, I mean, when it comes to the unemployment, like I said, when you get to the point where you would receive the loan for the PPP, once that money actually comes in, that's when you need to stop collecting unemployment, at least for 8 weeks during that period that they look at for loan forgiveness. And then after that 8 weeks, you can reapply if you're still not able to work.
Okay. Will we get compensated for the time the CARES Act has been in place?
To my understanding, for your unemployment, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so if that's referring to retroactive benefits, it's a state-by-state issue, but as far as we understand, all states are going to allow for that retroactive application of those benefits because they're getting all of this federal money to make those payments. So they're not just going to be able to hold on to it because they were slow at the game and accepting the claims.
Okay. And then what was that date? Do we know the official date of the actual mandated closure?
So once again, that's a state-by-state sort of deal. Obviously, I've read when it comes to Nevada that they're going to go all the way back to March 15th.
Okay. And how do they determine how much that you get?
For unemployment?
Probably for both, yeah. For the Paycheck Protection Program and for unemployment.
So unemployment, Paul, do you want to take that one?
Well, for unemployment, it would be based on your reported earnings. But as far as the details of all that, I've seen no information on that yet.
Right. And I think that it's capped at a maximum of like $450 a week, right?
For Nevada, it's $465, and that does not include the additional $600 from the CARES Act.
Right, which then could put you over $1,000 a week. I did read something where they were talking about you'd be eligible for 50% of the normal benefits, so it might be half of that $465. Once again, this is an area where it's very little guidance getting here. But one thing also to keep in mind with this unemployment insurance is that this is better, dollar for dollar money than getting paid by your clients because there's no self-employment tax attached onto that. So normally you pay 15%, in terms of self-employment tax on your earnings. The money that you get for unemployment will not be subject to that. So it's actually more valuable dollars, even though it'll obviously be less than what you would have normally been receiving, but at least the tax implications of it are more favorable. And then when it comes to determining how much you get for the Paycheck Protection Program, we already talked about how that's one, you take your total payroll for the year, which is your Schedule C net, divided by 12 times 2.5. That's how much you're going to be eligible for, and you'll be able to be relieved of that loan for 8 weeks worth of your pay, or 8 weeks worth of your earnings over the time from when your loan origination starts to the end of that 8-week period. And then when it comes to the EIDL, there's no real formula for that other than they're looking at the amount of need that you have, which is a factor of the losses that you're projecting in 2020 by not being able to work. So there's no clear answer there. It's just, whatever they feel like you need from a working capital standpoint, that's what they're going to give you. So for self-employed folks, I just wouldn't depend on getting any more than 10 or 15,000. I just don't see how you get amounts that exceed that from the EIDL.
Okay. And then what if you're an S Corp or LLC? I thought I heard something about $3,000. You know what that's referring to, Chase?
3,000. I don't know specifically what the $3,000 refers to, but when it comes to an S corporation, as the owner of the S corporation, you're required to pay yourself a payroll. So if you have an S corp, you can apply for unemployment insurance the way that any other employee can. So while Nevada's trying to figure out all of this, as it applies to self-employed folks, if you're an employee of your S corporation, you get to apply like anyone else does. So you should be applying right now because nothing will hold you back from doing that. Mm-hmm. If you're an LLC, chances are you're the only owner of that LLC, so you're treated as though you're a sole practitioner or sole proprietor. So you're kind of in the same boat that everyone else is. The LLC is disregarded for these purposes unless the LLC has made the S election.
Okay. For Paula, how will we know when the site is up and running to accept their applications?
We'll announce it in the group as soon as we get any information, but you can check the DTR website daily for updates. When you go onto the website, on the left-hand side, the very first thing listed in there are the I think it's COVID-19 updates. So if you click on that, it brings up the latest updates.
Okay. Who's getting the extra $600? Regular folks on unemployment or independent contractors as well?
It's both. Should get it based on your earnings.
Okay.
So the $600 is going to be flat across the board. So it doesn't matter how much you're getting from the state. Otherwise, everyone gets the $600 if you're being paid by your state for unemployment insurance.
Okay. And then this could be for both of you. Paula, maybe you answer for the unemployment and Chase for the loan programs. As an independent contractor, what information should you have ready for the website when it's up and working? So when they're ready to file for unemployment, what information do they need?
What's that?
So when they're ready to file for unemployment, what information do they need ready to go?
You're going to need your earnings information ready. So whatever you used for your taxes, I would assume that you would use that information.
Yeah, we don't have clarity on exactly what that is, but a best practice here is to get your 2019 return, if not filed, at least prepared so that you can provide that. It's not due until July 15th, but getting it prepared so you have that, because one way or another, someone's going to request it. So just get it done so that you have it ready to go.
And then Chase, is there more than one SBA loan?
Yeah, so the PPP loan actually is an SBA loan under Section 7A. So there's that loan. Then there's also the EIDL, which is SBA once again. So those are both SBA loans. There's another loan that's coming down the pipeline too, called the Main Street Lending Program, but that's minimum loans of $1 million, and it's for mid-sized businesses. So really the only ones that are relevant at all to self-employed folks are just the PPP and the EIDL.
Okay. I've applied for the SBA grant 3 times, the latest last week. I received a letter telling me they denied it. Should I go back in?
Yeah, I mean, so there's 2 things here. One, even if you get denied for the EIDL application, you're still eligible for the grant. So they shouldn't be denying you the grant. You very easily could get denied the loan itself, but you should be getting the $1,000 under the grant. So if that's, kind of what's happening in this situation, I would absolutely recommend, calling someone at the SBA and explaining the situation, because the law clearly states that even if you're not approved for the EIDL loan, you're still eligible and should receive the $1,000 emergency EIDL grant.
Okay. The PPP says you can use the money for payroll and things like rent. Are they asking or verifying what you use it for? As long as you're keeping within the 75% of payroll, it is as forgivable loan?
Yeah, so you're going to have to report to your bank, because ultimately it's going to be the bank that signs off on, what they're going to forgive. And so they're going to have pretty clear guidelines by the time they're doing this. So you're going to need to be able to show potentially a tax return. I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case, but you may have to show that, and that would be only if you're applying for this forgiveness, in the spring of 2021. But they'll probably want to see, bank statements. If you have a profit and loss statement, that would be very helpful too. And then, that 75% you're referring to is that no more than 25% of loan forgiveness can be rent and utilities. So you're going to want to be able to show, how much is your net income from your self-employment. That's going to be your payroll, which can't be any less than 75% of the total forgiveness you're asking for. And then you would also show your rent and your utilities. So quite honestly, having a profit and loss statement is probably your best bet to be able to show those items. Otherwise, if you're applying for this much later down the road, then you'd probably want to show a Schedule C as well.
All right. What if you haven't done your 2019 taxes yet? Are they going to go off of your 2018?
There's no clarity there. What I would recommend is, once again, putting it together, even if you don't file it right away. I mean, if you have an accountant that can put it together, just get it done, or go on TurboTax and prepare the return, even if you don't file it, just so you have a Schedule C to show for 2019, because a bank may accept 2018, but there's no specific, allowance for them to do so. So, the other thing, they might look for is your 1099s from 2019. Not everyone has 1099s, especially if, you don't have a credit card processor, because it's not like your clients are issuing you a 1099. So, best practice here is just to get it prepared, even if you don't want to file it right now, because they're not going to pull tax return transcripts. So as long as you have the return, quite honestly, that's going to be the best thing you can have.
All right. If we get unemployment, how will that affect our taxes for 2020?
So it's taxable income for federal tax purposes. But like I was mentioning before, it's not subject to self-employment tax. So you're not going to have that additional 15% tax on those dollars. It'll just be for your federal income tax purposes. You'll pay your normal income tax on that based on whatever income tax rate you're at on your return.
Cool. And Paul, this is for you. Did they give you any kind of estimated time for the unemployment website to be ready?
No, the only thing she stated is that they are working round the clock, day and night, with the vendor that they hired to get it up and running as soon as possible.
Okay. This person said they did get their EIDL. It wasn't the 10K, but it was 1K, kind of like what Chase was referencing.
Awesome. That's what we're seeing across the board.
Mm-hmm.
When I spoke to the SBA, they told me it could take up to 3 weeks before you get an email letting you know your loan status.
If that's for the EIDL, which I'm assuming it is, if you're speaking to the SBA, you could be waiting longer than that, to be honest. I mean, we know of a lot of businesses that applied, back in the March 22nd-ish time frame and still haven't heard anything, and we're well beyond 3 weeks. So I think 3 weeks might even be optimistic. But yeah, it's a waiting game there.
All right. What if the shutdown ends before we are able to qualify for PPP or UI? Are we basically screwed?
That's a good question.
That is a good question. So the covered period here is from February 15th through June 30th of this year. So if you're able to go back to work during the 8 weeks after you get the loan, then that's actually a good thing. And the reason is because your payroll is going to be determined off of your net earnings. So, in terms of what you're going to be forgiven for on the loan, if you don't have any work at all during that 8-week time period, then you might be in a situation where you don't get any loan forgiveness because you have no quote unquote payroll. Honestly, the best case scenario is that, let's say you get your money on May 1st from the PPP program and the restrictions are lifted that same day so that you can go back to work and, probably make a lot more money than you normally do, just because everyone like myself who hasn't gotten a haircut in months, is clamoring for your services. So we're all hoping you can get back to work sooner than later. I know my wife is, and I am too, because my hair looks like crap. But if they open the restrictions, or when they open the restrictions, that's going to be to your benefit, because that's going to allow for the maximum loan forgiveness under that program.
Nice. Okay, so this person just said, just so you guys know, this is awesome. It brings peace. That was very nice. Can you link all these loans and grants and who's best to apply for? After this, we'll kind of send all the links. As far as loans and grants go, Chase, would you just recommend going through your actual bank that you already bank with?
For purposes of the PPP, 100%. If they're not accepting applications at this point for whatever reason, then you want to start looking at other options. Cabbage is probably the one that's lowest hanging fruit in terms of a company that's accepting any and all applications. And that's Cabbage with a K. They're an online lender. So if your bank is telling you no, that's probably the lowest hanging fruit in terms of where you absolutely can apply, regardless of any pre-existing banking relationship.
Cool. If I haven't applied for unemployment yet, should I wait? Yes. If you're an independent contractor, wait until they update the website.
One other thing, I think part of that previous question too, some of the misinformation that's out there is that you can't apply for both the EIDL can. There's some language that's less than clear about not commingling those funds. So not getting, duplicative funding for your payroll essentially. So if you're getting an EIDL as well as a PPP and both of those are being used for the same payroll, that's where you can run into some issues. But by and large, I think, at least as far as, our beauty professionals are concerned, that's probably something to not worry a whole lot about. The dollar amounts that they're going to be getting are not going to be super high, at least in terms of what other businesses might be getting with employees. So, just try to be smart about it. I think a best practice in that regard is segregating those funds as much as you can. Know exactly what you're paying for. So once again, having a profit and loss statement to show where all that money's going, is going to be a best practice to, if you ever had to substantiate, what was done with that money, that you could very clearly show to anyone inquiring. But once again, I think the risk profile is pretty low for our population here because, certain businesses that we know of are getting multi-million-dollar loans under the PPP program. And that's where you're going to see a little bit more scrutiny because the dollars are bigger over there.
Okay. Questions are still coming in. So we'll try to get through a few more. And if we don't, then we can just kind of save them for next one. This one is for self-employed workers who also work a secondary part-time job. Will this affect our benefits for being self-employed, or will we claim solely as an independent contractor? So how would you advise someone that has multiple sources of income?
So will our affect benefits for being self-employed? So if that secondary job that they're referring to, if one of those is a W-2 job, then, they're most likely going to fall under the traditional unemployment system. So if they still have that job, they're going to be eligible for reduced benefits depending on how many hours they're working. So, I mean, if you have that hybrid situation, I mean, my recommendation would just be to go, the normal route, assuming that, your W-2 job is either reduced hours or you're not working at all. I would go just totally exclude the fact that you're an independent contractor, because you can apply now. And the majority of the money is going to come for that $600 a week, that pandemic unemployment assistance, which everyone's eligible for the full $600, regardless of how much the state's paying you. So just because you can apply now and it's a lot easier of a process to do so, I would ignore that you're an independent contractor unless you're working a substantial amount of hours in your W-2 job that would preclude you from making that claim. But also know that if that was the case and you apply as an independent contractor, they might just say, well, you're making X, over here in your W-2 job, so you're not eligible. So I think it's all really going to come down to, how many hours they're working at that W-2 job to dictate, what's going to happen there.
Okay. If we applied for unemployment and received our cards, do we have to file again? Do we know about that, or are we waiting?
The information I received says, yes, you will have to apply as an independent contractor once the website is up and functioning.
Yeah, and if they don't list it in the FAQs, maybe once they finally update the website, maybe call someone to say, I do have a card. What's the best way to move forward?
Yeah, I would advise that as well.
In what case would you not need to apply for the EIDL or PPP?
Well, I mean, there's no requirement to do any of this, right? So in terms of where you might be able to receive better assistance otherwise, for the population we're talking about, beauty professionals, self-employed, I don't see better alternatives to that, quite honestly. For employers, there are some other options with tax credits that you can take if you're not doing the PPP program, but that requires you to have employees. So, if you're not going for the EIDL or PPP, there's no better alternative, to be honest.
Okay, you might have already answered this, but if you file for the EIDL loan, do you get qualified for the grant, or is that a separate application?
So if you've applied, I think it's within the last 2.5 weeks or so, maybe even 3 at this point, under their new system, there's part of that application is, choosing to apply for that. So it's that emergency EIDL grant is applied for within the normal EIDL loan application. So if you've done it under the new process and you've essentially checked that box, then you've applied for essentially both there.
Okay. And this one is, so if you already applied for unemployment weeks ago, been denied, but have continued to file a weekly claim, is that all we need to do? You're saying not to file any more call, but should we continue to file a weekly claim for retroactive benefits?
Again, once the website is updated, you will have to refile as an independent contractor. So I would advise you not to keep doing that, because it's going to slow down your process for getting your benefits once the site has been updated.
And once it is live, you'll have the ability to specify when you became unemployed. So it's not like you have to apply multiple times. It's just you say, this is when I was unemployed, then those benefits should be paid retroactive.
Okay, if we shouldn't double dip, wouldn't it make more sense to just do unemployment versus PPP or EIDL? Because those are loans that will have to be paid back to some extent, whereas unemployment, you don't.
Yeah, I mean, that very well, could work to your favor there because, you're exactly right. There is no repayment of unemployment insurance. So, I mean, that's really just a specific calculation, for your circumstances as to whether it makes sense. Because if you're pulling in $1,000 a week, in unemployment, how much would you be making, doing your, beauty services? If that amount is higher, then you'd get more benefit by, foregoing unemployment insurance in favor of the PPP. One thing that should be noted is that you can't claim any more loan forgiveness than what would equate to $100,000 on an annualized basis. So the maximum loan forgiveness that you'll be able to get under the PPP program is $15,384, and that's over an 8-week period. Over that same 8 weeks, you might earn something like, $7,000, $8,000 in unemployment insurance. So if you're a high earning stylist, the PPP is still going to be far more advantageous. But if you're not making, 6 figures on an annualized basis, then that's where you want to see which one makes more sense. Because like I said, it's an 8-week time period, right? If you want to just factor in for this sheer simplicity of it that you get $1,000 a week, then that's $8,000 total that you'd have to be benchmarking against. So if you made $52,000 in a given year, doing stylist services, then that's where it's kind of that break-even point. So if you're making more than $52,000, then probably want to go with the PPP. If you're not, or if you don't think you will for 2021, for 2020, then you might want to just stay on unemployment.
Okay, let's take one more question, then we can wrap up. If we're not SP or LLC, do we still qualify for a loan? If so, which one?
So yeah, SP is standing for sole proprietorship. So if you're not a sole proprietorship or an LLC, actually you're by default a sole proprietorship if you don't have an entity, which would be an LLC, C corporation, S corporation. There's a lot of different entity forms out there, but if you don't have an actual entity that you've registered with, in this case, the Secretary of State of Nevada, you're just by default a sole practitioner or sole proprietor. And anyone who files a Schedule C, which would be anyone who doesn't have an entity, is absolutely eligible for these programs.
Sounds good. Okay, I think this is a good time to wrap up. We will continue to kind of use our resources to find new information, and then we'll also update the group when the unemployment site has been updated so they can start taking independent contractors. Anything else you guys want to provide before we wrap up?
The last piece of advice I guess I would give is, not so much related to the assistance and the tax side of things, but I mean, if you're anything like me, purpose is kind of what everyone needs in a time like this. And when you're not able to work, it's easy to not feel that same sense of purpose. So, cultivating that in different ways and different avenues is going to be what gets you through this thing. So we're all in a situation together. So I think the easiest thing, the lowest hanging fruit is to, reach out to friends and family, especially ones you haven't reached out to, recently. There's an easy icebreaker. Everyone's going through the exact same situation. We're all in the same boat. So, if you're worried about the conversation being awkward, you've got that to fall back on. But, I think the most important thing we can do in this situation is to connect and reconnect with others and support people, because not everyone is doing well. I mean, even if you think you're down in the dumps, there are people that are even, in worse mental states, so that phone call could be, life-changing or life-saving. So, the idea of together alone, is real. So reaching out to anyone you can think of, making that part of your daily routine is going to help everyone here. So I'd leave you with that. Paula, do you have anything?
No, I just echo all those great words. Definitely. We've all got to be here for each other and support each other. I know for me, on a daily basis, I'm reaching out to everybody in our community. I encourage you to do the same. And if I can be of any help or support or just someone to listen, if you're having a bad day, feel free to reach out to me.
And then the last piece here is that we're going to be setting up an email address specifically to field questions that are related to anything that we talked about today, because this is a fluid situation and we're going to get more information. So, it's not this broadcast isn't meant to be the final answer to everything, because answers will change when we get more information. So we will have an email address that we'll post into this group that you can send any of your questions to, because we want to be a resource, to help everyone get through this. So we're getting that resource set up. And as soon as we have an email address, we'll be posting it in the group.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right.